This is a Transportation TV News update. I'm Tony Dorsey reporting. On June 25th, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee held its second all-day oversight hearing to gauge the progress states are making on putting American Recovery and Reinvestment Act dollars to work. Federal Highway Administration Executive Director Jeffrey Paniati gave an upbeat assessment.
In passing the Recovery Act, Congress emphasized the need to rapidly infuse these funds into the economy, requiring that 50% of the funds apportioned to a state must be obligated under a project agreement by June 29th. I'm very pleased to report that all states have met the target at least 10 days in advance of the deadline, as the administration will announce today.
Paniati testified some 4,800 road and bridge projects valued at $15.4 billion have been approved by his agency, representing almost 60% of the total ARRA funds provided to the FHWA. As of the taping of this newscast, that amount of obligated funds had surpassed $16 billion. AASHTO Vice President Butch Brown, Executive Director of the Mississippi DOT, testified that ARRA investments are being made in areas that need it most.
States are working hard to ensure that economically distressed areas benefit. In Arkansas, the program will deliver 84% of the jobs to distressed areas. 48 of the state's 51 projects are now in distressed areas.
Highways aren't the only benefactors of ARRA funds. Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority General Manager Joseph Casey says $8.4 billion in recovery funds have been targeted for transit programs nationwide, of which 58% have been obligated or are awaiting final FTA approval. The recovery funds are needed to accommodate growing ridership nationwide. SEPTA has seen a 12% jump in the past 3 years.
Of the 32 projects through May, 22 of the projects have been awarded, accounting for 75% of the funds. Some of the major projects that we're doing, exercising an option for 40 additional hybrid buses from New Flyer Industries to deal with the growing ridership.
Meanwhile, growing concerns were raised about the pending crisis with the Highway Trust Fund. The issue's urgency was made clear June 24th when U.S. Deputy Transportation Secretary John Porcari sent this letter to State Departments of Transportation advising them of an impending cash shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund's highway account. Porcari said that the Federal Highway Administration could begin to ration state repayments as soon as early August. Porcari wrote, "I want to assure you that FHWA and DOT will do all we can to minimize the impact of the cash shortfall on the states. We are monitoring the cash status of HTF on a daily basis and will continue to explore every possible technical procedure and policy tool available to manage the shortfall. At the same time, we are working closely with Congress to develop a solution to the shortfall." Faced with the same crisis last summer, Congress transferred $8 billion from the government's general fund back into the Highway Trust Fund. But the Obama administration is calling for an 18-month extension of the current surface transportation bill and interim funding for the trust fund in the neighborhood of $20 billion. The money would be tied to policy reforms regarding metropolitan mobility, livability, and cost-benefit analysis of transportation projects. The White House also has maintained that any revenue transfers to the Highway Trust Fund must be paid for by offsets.
So obviously action is important and needed soon. I think the Secretary and the administration believe that it is important to, in taking that action, to take a comprehensive and a fully developed look between the administration working closely with the members here in developing that approach to reauthorization, and that taking the time in the 18 months to deal with both the initial crisis and develop that comprehensive approach is the most appropriate way to proceed.
Voicing strong objections to the White House's call for an 18-month delay, the Highways and Transit Subcommittee voted June 24th to send a draft 775-page measure to the full committee. T&I Committee Chairman James Oberstar said that the best solution to the Highway Trust Fund crisis would be to pass a new 6-year surface transportation bill this year.
That's why we moved yesterday in this committee on a new authorization. That's why we'll be moving in July with the Ways and Means Committee on the funding mechanisms. Why Mr. DeFazio, Mr. Micah, Mr. Duncan, and I, and all the members of the committee on both sides have been working so hard on a new program, not just for the next 2 months, not just to the end of this fiscal year, not just for filling the hole in the trust fund, but for 6 years to create 6 million jobs. And we've had no outreach from the administration, no participation, no discussion. And I am personally offended by that.
Meanwhile, during the week of June 29th, U.S. DOT Secretary Ray LaHood continued pressing for an 18-month reauthorization bill, while voicing continued opposition to increasing the federal gasoline tax, at least for now. Politico reported that LaHood met Monday night with key senators exploring ideas with top White House officials on where to find the resources necessary to fix the Highway Trust Fund crisis. No solutions have been announced. That's the Transportation News Update. I'm Tony Dorsey reporting.